Yo, 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 what the fuck is going on, guys? It's your boy Jace3420 and or Jordan, and if you're fucking special, you call me Young Sweye. What the fuck is going on? So today, we're coming in with the second part to me breaking my wrist playing Assassin's Creed. If you guys enjoy this video, if you guys like what you hear, please leave a like, subscribe for more future videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Always remember, if you're smoking along with me, light that shit up, let's get it. If you're on an edible, I don't know what the fuck you're doing, but you need to wait 30 minutes before you click on this shit. And then if you're off the cart, man, oh man, I just know you hurting right now. So cough that shit up, wait about 20 seconds, slap that little pause button, you hear me? While you coughing, slap that like button, and then, we get that mutual benefit. Let's get active. So, where I left off the last video was that I had just jumped off the balcony following my friend, who I think I named him Chase. So I just jumped off following Chase, knocked out for a good couple seconds because I got a concussion and woke up all hazy. My mom's yelling at me in the background, calling me dumb, yada yada yada. And I look down at my wrist and my wrist is not in place. It's good 4 to 6 inches out of place. On a nice little gooseneck, looks like a fucking bow and arrow, but not the arrow part, just the bow part. You know what I mean? But anywho, so yeah, I wake up, at the same time, I think it was Joey that I named him, but Chase's little brother. It was either Joe, Joseph, or something like that, but he even tried to keep on, getting me to be an assassin, you know what I mean? Like, he was trying to come up behind me and assassinate me. I was like, nah, G. Nah, G. I'm hurt. So, I'm holding my wrist and I'm trucking back to my apartment. You know what I mean? Luckily, I was, like I said, pretty close, so I didn't have to, walk too far. But I was trucking back to my apartment. And at this time, I didn't feel it. I don't know if I was still in shock. I don't know if there's so much adrenaline that, I just didn't have any feeling. I don't know if this is a normal break to where if people also get goosenecked wrist or goosenecked forearms, whatever the case is, that they also don't feel it right away. But whatever the scenario is, I didn't feel it for like 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, And the whole time that I didn't feel it, I walked inside, I'm sitting there. I'm like, kind of like, whenever you walk inside from my garage, you would walk in, there's a laundry room or whatever that you walk through, and then you walk into the kitchen, right? And my mom was like coming from the living room into the kitchen to get me an ice pack or something like that, because she knew that I like screwed up, but she didn't realize how bad I screwed up. You know what I mean? But she was, she was pissed, pacing toward the fucking freezer. And she was like, "You stupid idiot, why would you jump off that? Why would you do this and that and that?" And literally all I could say, and I couldn't even say this with like 100% confidence, with 100% strength. I was just like, I broke my wrist. And my mom's like, "You didn't break your wrist. You didn't do anything like that. Blah, 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 blah." Her back was still turned, into the freezer trying to find me an ice pack or whatever. And I was like, "No, Mom, I actually broke my wrist. Like, I actually broke it." She was like, "No, you didn't. Take this ice pack right here and put it on your wrist and go back outside and go play with your friends." And I was like, I literally just said, "Okay." I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, because in my head, I didn't know. And then the reason why my mom said, I didn't break my wrist prior to her looking at it was, I guess I was kind of like one of those kids that always cried wolf in a way. It wasn't for anything bad. I wouldn't, do that type of thing, but I would always get hurt. Like, I got hurt a lot as a kid. You know what I mean? But even through all the times of me getting hurt and stuff like that, every single time that I thought I broke a bone up until this point, I'd never broken a bone. You know what I mean? But I've at least told my mom, 4 or 5 times, different times prior to this, growing up, that I had a broken bone. And I think the reason why I always wanted to have a broken bone, or thought that I had a broken bone too, was because I don't know why, but I thought that like hard cast, were the coolest fucking things on the planet. Like the fact that that you walk around school, everybody's trying to sign your cast, and it's just like one of those little memorabilia things. I thought that was like low key one of the hardest things ever. And I think that's part of the reasons why, I have so many random tattoos that I have, is just because I like the memorabilia of shit. And we'll get into the tattoos. I have a whole video planned out of where I explain every single one of my tattoos and why I have them, blah, blah, blah. So that's going to come out soon. But anyway, regardless, I was just obsessed with the fact of having a fucking cast. You know what I mean? And so my mom didn't believe a minute of it. Didn't believe a word I said until she turned around and handed me the ice pack. She looked at my wrist. I'm sitting there holding it up, like I'm keeping it elevated. And I think that's partly the reason why it also didn't hurt. But, that's one of the main things you need to do if you ever break something, just if you're conscious enough, is to keep it elevated. I was too young and naive. I didn't even know that. I just did it because, I don't know, I just felt like my arm shouldn't be down, to my side whenever it's not even angled right. Like it's literally off of how it's supposed to look. Blah, blah, blah. So she looks down, her jaw drops. I remember this moment so vividly. Her jaw drops. She goes, "Oh my God, we need to go to the hospital." And like all that anger, all that, her being upset because I made a stupid decision went all out the window, and, mom mode became activated. And, and I don't want you guys to think that my mom was a bad mom or anything like that just because she told me to go outside and, like stop being a bitch basically. Like that's really what it was. Is like as a kid, I kind of grew up like I would kind of bitch at my mom, you know what I mean? Like I grew up with an older brother. He would always fuck me up. And then so it wasn't until the point where I really started hanging out with Chase regularly, and then he was old enough to understand that I was old enough to where he could, mess around with me like an older brother. But up until that point, I was kind of, without better terms to say, I was kind of bitch made. You know what I mean? And I hate to say that about myself, but I mean, it's a complete 360 transformation. Well, I guess 180 transformation, whatever you want to say, from how I was to how I am now. I'm not like that now, but back in the day, I was a little bitch made, and I don't know. I think I was more cautious than anything, you know what I mean? And I always assumed the worst. I was a very paranoid child. I think it was because of my anxiety, you know what I mean? Like to this day, I still have severe anxiety. So it's just one of those things that I was always born with, always dealt with, and just didn't realize and understand how to express it until I was older. And not only express it, but control it, you know what I mean? So it was just one of those things. So again, we got completely sidetracked. The Mary Jane will do that to you. But back on track, me and my mom started walking out to the car. My friends were all waiting outside my freaking garage. And the only person who really knew that my wrist was broken was Joey or Joseph or Joe, whatever I used for his name. If I didn't use that name last video, I apologize because Chase's little brother is Joseph. And anywho, I think he told everybody else, but nobody really believed him. Partly because he was a small child, but like also just because, like I was again one of those kids that would kind of cry wolf, and then it's just like if it wasn't visibly broken, like if my bone wasn't physically out of place, and it just it just looked normal, but it was swollen, I would have told my mom that I broke my wrist, and she would have never taken me to the hospital. She would have just said it's swollen. You know what I mean? And it's not because like, I mean, my mom's not a nurse. She's not a doctor. She can't really tell. And then at the same time, I mean, my mom was also in a position whenever she was younger, early teenagers, preteens, whatever, blah, 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 that she had a similar situation to where she fell out of a tree. She broke her arm, and her mom didn't believe her. So my grandmother, and, so she literally self-healed her broken arm as a child, but she truly broke her arm. You know what I mean? And that's so beside the point, but that's just how my mom was raised. You know what I mean? So if I would have came to her with a non-visibly broken bone, she would have just assumed that it wasn't broken. You know what I mean? And then just kept it pushing. And so, I go outside, all my friends are waiting, and they realize that my wrist is broken there. And then I remember Chase just going like, oh, fuck, and just running away and, like, basically, like, just, like, trying not to see it. The other dude, I didn't really give him a name, but his name is David. David was just, he was, like, around Chase's age or whatever, but David literally threw up. And, yeah, it was just one of those things to where it was like, it's not something you see every day. And even me searching up gooseneck wrist, I want to let you know that there is no pictures of that. And the picture that I found to use as a thumbnail, like, that is the closest that I could have, like, that I've seen on the internet to my broken wrist. But that literally does not do it justice to how much more severe my break was compared to the break that's in the thumbnail. It's actually insane. It's mind-boggling for me to even think back and, like, look at my wrist. And I'm going to ask my mom later on today if she has the original picture still on, like, her Facebook or something. And if she does, I will definitely, if not put it in this video, I'll make it into a short on my channel. But, like, this image is, like, I actually am very curious to see it. But my wrist was not anywhere to where it could have literally made sense to be. That's how bad I broke my fucking wrist. Like, 6 inches is not an exaggeration to how far down my wrist was away from my forearm. Coming from, if we're looking at the top of my arm, that's my left arm, right? You start from your bicep, you go down, you reach your elbow, right? Give yourself about a half inch between the little pocket that's on top of your arm, like opposite of your elbow, that little pocket where that crease is. Give yourself a half an inch forward, and from there down to the back of my hand, basically to where my wrist ends and my hand bone connects, was broken. And if you start from the base, from the back toward the elbow, it had a gradual decline, like no bullshit. If we're talking about protractor degrees, it had a gradual decline probably from like 0 degrees to, I want to say, like about a 10-degree incline or decline, bro. And then it finally went back up toward the base at where the hand meets the wrist. That's whenever it started looking normal again and was at the same level of my forearm. To this day, my wrist is still slightly, just ever so slightly, inches below my forearm. No matter how much I put on muscle onto my arm and stuff like that, the muscle that lives on top of my wrist does not grow very much because of this break. So we drove to the hospital. Get to the hospital, they got me in pretty fast because of the severity of my break. And, they're checking my weight, they're checking my height at this time. At this point, I knew, well, let me rephrase that. I didn't know as a child, but looking back, I definitely had a concussion. Because indicators of it was, my mind was hazy for literally the next week. Like, I was just out of it for the next week. Every time I would stand up, I would see basically stars, like basically pass out and then like wake back up again and stuff like that, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of obvious signs for a concussion, but they didn't treat me for a concussion. They just treated me straight for the wrist and blah blah blah. I'm not too for sure if they did a scan and then they found out that I had a concussion, yada yada yada. But if I was told that I had a concussion, I never remembered. But I do and can comfortably say, with all the amount of concussions I've had growing up, I can comfortably say that this is definitely a time that I had a concussion. I mean, to be fair, I literally jumped almost 15 feet off of the fucking balcony and landed straight on the left side of my body, my head included. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I can only imagine how fucked up my head was. But regardless, I clean broke both of my bones. You know, I think it's the ulna and the radius. And I broke my growth plate. And it wasn't like, sometimes, first of all, it's hard as fuck to break your growth plate. And they at first said that I had a fracture in my growth plate, but then the second time that they did an X-ray to put on to put on the hard cast, because like for the first 6 weeks after I got out of the hospital, which I was fucked up coming out of this hospital. They doped my ass up with so much fucking morphine. I was gone, bro. I was fucking gone. But like to kind of speed up, fast forward a little bit, 6 weeks, went by where I had a gauze splint that was literally from my fingertips to my shoulder blade, basically, like to the top of my shoulder. And it was so AIDS because I got so much shit for Christmas that required two hands. I literally asked for the new Halo. I think it was Halo Reach. I asked for Red Dead Redemption. I asked for this badass Lego set, like $100 Lego set. I asked for all this shit, and I literally got everything that I wanted. And everything required two hands to fucking do. And especially fingers, you know what I mean? I didn't have my fingers. I just had fingertips. But I persevered. I still played video games. I still built that Lego set, all with this fucking gauze pad, all within a week of me breaking my shit. Like, I wasn't going to let a break stop me from playing video games, especially during break, and having fun with my toys that I got. You know what I mean? I still went outside. I remember Chase got a fucking Wii, and I was playing the Michael Jackson The Experience game on his Wii, and I threw the fuck out of his nunchuck because, it was in my left hand and couldn't grip it because, the gauze pad. It was so fucked. But, 6 weeks in that, and then I got a hard cast, and whenever I got my hard cast to where I could just have it on my, my wrist because my forearm was healed, they said that I broke my growth plate. So they said that my growth plate was still fractured, but it was hairline fractured and it would, quote, heal on its own. That's what the fucking doctor told me or whatever. But they fucked up because the cast that they gave me didn't reach my growth plate. It was just in front of my growth plate, and the splint didn't fully heal my growth plate. Like, if you have ever broken your growth plate in your arm, you know that, or like not even broken, even if you fracture it, it's one of like the longest healing bones in your body, just because like your body doesn't really push out too much calcium toward that bone. And then like also at the same time, it's just like, comparatively to like your radius and your ulna, it's not that important of a bone. And so it's like your body just doesn't heal it as fast as it would heal a normal bone break or whatever, or fracture. So in all reality, I should have had something that covered my growth plate at this point, but I didn't. And so, but I was in a hard cast for, I think it was 10 weeks. And then at that point, I was told I was supposed to go to physical therapy every single week and wear this like splint, like this like Velcro splint, the black Velcro, I can't even speak, the black Velcro splint that you would wear if you like sprained something, you know what I mean? I had to wear one of those for my wrist, but that was more intrusive than my cast was playing video games and stuff like that. So I never wore my splint. So like to be fair, I stopped going to physical therapy like after the second week. I just told my mom I didn't want to go anymore and that my wrist was fine. And even though for a solid year my wrist hurt so tremendously, especially around like where my growth plate was, it hurt so bad. Like certain times whenever I would lift certain things or do certain things, like I still wanted to do my best to, I don't know, just proceed to live my normal lifestyle. I love playing football, so I literally played football every single day at school with a broken wrist. You know what I mean? With the cast on, and I was a wide receiver main. You know what I mean? Like that's what I played, and whenever I actually played football, that's what I played. Whenever I played on the playground, like I was a wide receiver. I was a wide receiver and a cornerback or a safety. You know what I mean? So like I was catching balls left and right, and still made it a point to catch balls. I was a very aggressive wide receiver, you know what I mean? And so I would jump up there, I would get nasty. I wasn't afraid to fall.